What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? Well, we're past the halfway point in the abbreviated MLB season, so it's time to check in with our resident baseball analyst, Rob Duran of Rob Duran Sports. Rob will give us a breakdown on each division as we head toward the playoffs. He'll discuss the surprise teams in each league and give us his thoughts on what in the world is going on with his beloved New York Yankees. So hang with us. We're coming back with Rob Duran talking baseball on Sports 360. Joining me today on Sports 360 is our resident baseball expert, guru, whatever word you want to use for someone who knows what they're talking about. Our man, Rob Duran. Rob, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing well too. We're talking here early on Labor Day, so enjoying the weekend. Here in the Northeast, I'm in New Jersey. It's been a beautiful weekend weather-wise, and so it's been good. We have a lot of things going on at this time of the year that we normally don't have, and including the pennant races. But we also have NBA basketball playoffs, NHL playoffs, U.S. Open is going on right now. So there's a lot going on. But obviously, man, we want to talk about baseball, and we haven't spoken for a while, but we want to talk a little bit about where things sit in this baseball season that has about another 3.5 weeks left. Just overall, Rob, what's been your take on the season if you were to encapsulate it? Like, how have you found this 2020 season so far?
It's definitely been different for a lot of obvious reasons with the COVID stuff and, the shortened season, a lot of doubleheaders, especially the 7-inning doubleheaders. You're in the fifth inning and you're here not realizing the game is almost done. So that's been kind of weird, but it's also been fun. I will say, this season I've probably seen more games of teams I don't normally watch, which has been interesting because I'm seeing a lot more, believe it or not, of the West Coast teams and things like that. So it's been fun because you're able to see, a lot of teams at all times of day and stuff like that. And with this shortened season, every game has a lot of meaning to it. It's a lot of playoff atmosphere type games. You see a lot of emotions from the players, something you don't normally see in such a long season. So it's definitely been a more fun season to watch, I think.
Yeah, it's been different, as you said. I mean, first of all, we have the 60 games, and then, we've had a number of teams that have had to have games postponed because of COVID outbreaks on their team, which of course affects their opponents, right? Because like what we saw with the Marlins, and we saw with some of the others, if they can't play, if one team can't play, then whoever they were scheduled to play also is not playing, right? And so we have a number of teams who are behind in games played and have quite a few double headers coming up. And on that point, Rob, let me ask you this. Do you think that playing double headers actually is beneficial for teams because you only have to win a seventh inning game? Now, obviously, like you said, if you're trailing in the seventh inning game in the fifth inning, it might add some pressure to it. But it's interesting that, you may have some teams who, because they don't have COVID outbreaks, are playing nothing but 9-inning games. And then you may have some other teams who are playing a handful of 7-inning games. and whether or not that ends up being beneficial to them. What do you think about that?
I think the 7 inning games do help some teams, especially teams that are very built around, kind of starting the game early and scoring a couple runs in the first, second inning. Teams like that start off quick, or even teams that have very strong bullpens and can kind of piggyback with the starter, even if the starter only gives you, let's say, 3 innings, or you do an opener type strategy. I think it really helps those teams because you can kind of ride that for both games and just get off to a quick start, bring the bullpen in and shut the game down. So I think it does help, teams like that, teams that are very quick to start the games and can kind of just get everything done as soon as possible. And like you said, once you have that inning, that lead in the 5th inning, the game is you're starting to see the finish line in the game if you're the opponent. So I think that helps. On the flip side, though, I think having the traditional 9 inning games where you're not having double headers if you're a team, I don't think it changes too much for you because this is kind of what you're accustomed to doing, and you've kind of prepped yourself for full games and things like that. So I don't think having just regular traditional games affects too much, and I think the double headers will benefit certain teams.
Yeah, I was reading, recently that, you know, as far as the time of games, that there have been some seven inning games that have come in under 2 hours. Just about all of them are coming in well under 3 hours, right? And so, if you averaged it out and said, okay, it's 2.5 hours, you're getting 2 games in 5 hours. And there are times when a 9 inning game approaches 4 hours,
Yep.
right? So um, it really is. Even though you're playing 2 games, it's different. And obviously, it cuts both ways, though, right? It all depends. If you have the lead, then the shortened game is something you can go to your bullpen and try to lock it down. If you're trailing, then you don't have as much time to try to get back into the game. But that's certainly been a wrinkle in the season, um, as has been extra innings. There's been a number of extra inning games. I think the Yankees and Mets had a couple of 8th inning games, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rob, uh, maybe a week or so ago, the Yankees beat the Mets in 2 extra inning games as part of a doubleheader, didn't they?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's fun seeing the extra inning stuff with the runner on second starting out.
right.
And it's also kind of confusing, especially if you're the home team. You have the advantage right away, just a base hit, game over. But it's an interesting rule to say the least.
Yeah, and so I think a combination of the 7th inning games, the extra inning rules and stuff like that, has made the games a little bit different. But in the end, it's baseball, even without the fans and everything else. I mean, it's still you still got to get guys out. You still got to try to score runs, and we're in September now, and so it's the drive for the playoffs. Now, speaking about the playoffs, right? We have an expanded playoffs, right? So where we have 8 teams in each league are going to make the playoffs. We have some real races coming down the stretch. Um, what are your thoughts here if we would go through the divisions, and let's start in the National League, where I think when you look at the top of the divisions today, in the East you have Atlanta in first, over Philadelphia by 3 games. Chicago has a game and a half lead on St. Louis, and the Dodgers are 5 up on the Padres. Those 3 division leaders right now, no surprises there. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree. I think the biggest surprise, if I had to pick, quote unquote surprise, would be Chicago. Only because maybe a team like Cincinnati has underperformed this year. But no real huge surprise with either team there.
Yeah, and speaking of Cincinnati, because Cincinnati was one of the dark horse darlings for many of the prognosticators. they were believing that Cincinnati, who made some moves, had a strong rotation, seemed to have a good mix of veteran and young players. But as you said, they've underperformed. They're sitting in fourth place in the NL Central, 5 games out of first place, and if the season ended today, would be out of the postseason. Um, what's happened there? What's the reason for their underperformance?
It just seems like they haven't been able to put together a good stretch, which is something we kind of saw them do late last season. And Luis Castillo, who would have been their ace, who could be their ace on that staff, even with Trevor Bauer and Sonny Gray. He just hasn't been winning games lately, and I don't know what's different with him this season and last season where he was so dominant. He was an all-star and everything. And I just think they haven't been able to kind of put two and two together and have that real stretch run where, and maybe it's coming, who knows? This season is weird. So maybe that stretch run for them hasn't happened yet, which is completely possible given the state of Major League Baseball this season. But they just haven't been able to put together a string of baseball games where what they're capable of being able to do based on their roster and their pitching staff and all that stuff.
Right. But I tell you this, a team that has been able to put it together, as expected, has been the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're sitting up there with the best record in all of baseball at 30-12 and 5 games up on San Diego. What are your thoughts about the Dodgers?
No shock there at all. That team is, they're playing as expected, I would say. Their offense is a powerhouse. Even if they're down in a game, you expect them to come back and somehow find a way to win. And they're on a 2-game losing streak right now, which is, for them, I'm sure they'll run off a 5-game winning streak after this kind of thing. That's just the kind of season the Dodgers are having. They're having a very special season. The addition of Mookie Betts, who has played nearly every game this season, and he's just being Mookie Betts, one of the best baseball players on the planet. Maybe right under Mike Trout as the number 2 guy. His addition to the team, not just offensive production and defensively, but just in the clubhouse, the leadership he brings, the presence, I think that has helped that team and has really boosted the morale of the team and all that stuff. The Dodgers they're just playing a whole different game compared to the rest of the league.
Yeah, and speaking of Mookie Betts, he signed that huge extension too, right? So he's going to remain with the Dodgers for the foreseeable future, and so that has to be scary for the rest of baseball. But having said that, the Dodgers have been good now for a long time, and they haven't won yet, right? They haven't captured the championship yet. And I think the pressure is mounting on them, on Dave Roberts. At some point, you just can't be the regular season bully on the block. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're going to have to win it. And so let's see what happens this year with them, whether or not they can come away with the championship this year. And we'll talk about who they might be facing in the American League in a few minutes. But before we leave the National League, what about the Atlanta Braves? What have you seen of them? Because they are continuing to show themselves probably to be, the clear front runner in the NL East. They're in first place, but I think they also are showing that they're a cut above the rest of the teams in the NL East. What are your thoughts about the Braves?
I love the Braves. Acuna Jr., he's something special. The kid is just doing what he does. He's continuing to grow as a player on both sides of the ball. Offensively, we know what he can do. He was out for a little bit, came back, and I think I think it was against the Yankees, as a matter of fact. He blasted a home run. If I'm not mistaken, it was against Garrett Cole, and that was his first at bat back. So that's kind of been the Braves season. And I thought they'd lose a step when they lost their pitcher Soroka, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he's out for the season. And when that injury happened, I thought they'd take a step back, but they've come together, they've rallied together, and they're they're another team that, they're not at the Dodgers level in terms of how well they're playing, because the Dodgers, like I said, they're playing in a league of their own. But Atlanta is definitely a team that I would love to see in the playoffs going against some of that top competition. I'm excited to see what they have the rest of the way as well.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta, as I said, I mean, I think they are the class at the NL East.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though. You talk about the Dodgers. You know, the run differential. I think sometimes that's a little bit overblown. But the Dodgers have a run differential of like a plus 98, right? And the next closest team to them in the National League is the San Diego Padres at plus 53.
Insane.
And the Braves at a plus 41. And so it just really shows you, how good the Dodgers are and how
Yeah.
dominant they are in terms of, and you would expect that. Look, they won 30 games. So, you're winning more. You're winning, more than double, twice as many games as you're losing. And so there's going to be a significant run differential. But the Dodgers are just out of this world. But the Braves, I like their mix, and I think they're a hungry team, Rob. You know what I mean? I think that they
They
believe
are.
beat St. Louis last year. That was, an upset for them, and I think they're coming out this year with something to prove. And as you said, Acuna Jr. is just a phenomenal talent. But speaking of phenomenal talents, Jr., Fernando Tatis Jr. What are your thoughts about him? Because he's been pretty special this year.
He's the type of player that baseball loves to see and baseball desperately needs to kind of be in the spotlight. The dude is, I mean, maybe one of the most electric players I've ever seen in general in the history of me watching the game. And I was born in 1990. I've been watching the game probably since I was 2 or 3 years old. And he may be the most electric star I've seen to date. And it's incredible that the kind of season he's putting together and just the kind of things he does almost on a game by game basis. There's always at least one Fernando Tatis Jr. highlight. And it's incredible whether it's defensively, making these high jumps, these crazy throws, or the way he steals bases, which is kind of a lost art today in baseball. But just his speed is so dynamic and game changing. And offensively, I mean, no question, one of the best players in the game offensively today. It's incredible to see what he's able to bring to the table and just how he's kind of lifted that San Diego franchise along with the pieces around him, which is kind of crazy to say when you have Manny Machado at third base, that the team is Fernando Tatis is the guy in San Diego and not Machado, who you paid all the money to. And not to take anything away from Manny because he's having a great year as well, but just the kind of character that he's bringing to San Diego and to baseball in general, it's something that the game needs and something it's going to attract a lot of young fans as well, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, and San Diego has lived up to the hype too, where again
Yeah.
a lot of people were picking them as a so-called dark horse, but they certainly have shown themselves so far to be one of the better
Yeah.
teams in the National League, and they're
And
sitting.
I do think they have another gear to push. They added Clevenger at the
Mhm.
deadline, which I
Yep.
think is huge for their rotation because they had some question marks with the rotation with some of the young arms they have in there. So I think he kind of helps that a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see San Diego and LA go at it for these last 20 or so games.
Yeah, it will be. It certainly will be. And, right now, unless something really unusual happens, we'll see San Diego in the postseason, which is something we
Yeah.
haven't seen in a while. But let's flip over to the American League. And I'm not going to hide the ball, man. Let's go to the American League East, where
Oh
Tampa
boy.
Bay has been playing really well, but your Yankees, man, have been struggling. And we can start with the Yankees and then go to Tampa Bay. I know the Yankees have had a lot of injuries, And that is, I think, a big cause of their struggles. But you're front and center, Yankee fan. I know you're watching the games. What's going on with your Yanks?
Man, I was hoping we would skip over this subject, but I'm telling you, man. Listen, the last time we were on here, I had my chest out, pounding my chest, very confidently saying basically the Yankees were going to do what the Dodgers are doing in the National League. Boy, was I wrong. I think it starts with, and people forget the injury, like you mentioned the injuries, but a couple of the injuries that people aren't looking at that I think really affected this is the injury to Severino, who, in past seasons has been the quote unquote number one guy, the ace of the staff. He would have been a great compliment to Garrett Cole at number 2 in that pitching rotation. And then the loss of Tommy Kahnle in the bullpen. He's a guy that gets lefties and righties out at a high clip, and losing him right the first game of the season was huge. And I know, sometimes for bullpens, you're just plug a guy in. He's only going to throw 1 inning, 3 hitters maybe. But Tommy Kahnle was a very solid piece. His changeup was a game changer in terms of late innings, getting that strikeout, the big strikeout and stuff like that, which is actually what he did right before he got hurt. He struck a guy out on the changeup in a crucial part of a game. So I think those 2 injuries we're seeing the effects of them now. We didn't see them earlier when the Yankees were on that hot streak. They started 16-6, I believe, and kind of running away with the American League as expected. But now we're seeing the effects of not having that solid number 2 starter and not having those extra pieces in the bullpen. And just offensively, man, they're just not hitting. And I know the injuries to Judge, and, we just got Torres back. LeMahieu just came back. Urshela's now down, but they just haven't been hitting with guys on base, with the exception of LeMahieu, which is something that they thrived on early in the season and last season as well. It's just, and I don't know what to say about Gary Sanchez. I'm one of his biggest fans. I like the guy more than most Yankee fans do. And if you're on social media, you know how his name has been thrown around and kicked upon and all that stuff. But I think I have it here in 100 at-bats, he struck out 48 times. Mm-hmm. And that's not a winning formula for any club to have one of your big offensive threats, especially with Judge and Stan down. You kind of lean on Sanchez a little bit offensively, and he just hasn't been producing at all. And it's been a struggle for the Yankees. And I don't blame Aaron Boone. A lot of things are, blame the manager. He kind of takes all the blame. But even with some of his questionable calls, I know he's been trying to steal outs from the bullpen here and there to kind of rest his guys. I can't put all the blame on him because he's not the guy on the field, and his team is just not producing the way they should be producing, even with the injuries.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the Yankees sit in 3rd place in the AL East, behind 1st place Tampa and 2nd place Toronto. They're a game behind Toronto, 6.5 behind Tampa Bay. If the season were to end today, they're in 8th place in the American League, and they're trying to hold off Baltimore and Detroit, who are nipping at their heels of all teams. So This is not the place that I think most Yankees fans believe that they would be, but yet here they are. But right now they got to get healthy, but they have to play better. They have to swing the bats better, and they have a crucial series starting today against the Toronto Blue Jays. But staying in the East and going to the top of the division, Tampa Bay, what are your thoughts about Tampa? They're showing themselves to really, really be a team to be reckoned with.
Definitely. And we spoke about it a little bit off air, that in recent seasons, they've kind of always been there and they're not getting acknowledged. And I think this season, they're putting the league on notice that, hey, we're here. And, they beat up on the Yankees bad. I don't know how many games entirely they've won against the Yankees, but it's completely, they've dominated them completely. And then their bullpen is if you read the names off the list on their bullpen, you won't confuse them with names with, high leverage names that you see on a daily basis, but they're getting it done. They're getting their outs, they're making it happen. And their rotation, they just got Charlie Morton back. I spoke about their rotation the last time we were on. That three-headed monster they got with Snell, Glasnow, and now Morton, they're legit. And offensively, they're one of the better teams in the league. I'm scared of the Rays, man. I knew they would be good. I had them at second place. Before we figured out that the playoffs were expanding, I had them going in as the wild card team. But God, the Rays are good. They're very, very good on both sides of the ball, pitching, hitting, and even defensively, they're really good. They're a team to watch out for if I'm any team in the East or even in the American League in general.
Yeah, no doubt that they're the top team in the American League right now. But another team that is almost step by step with Tampa Bay is in the AL Central, and it's the Chicago White Sox, a team that we've talked about before with some some new additions, some nice talent, and that they could have could make some noise, and they certainly are making noise. They right now are in first place, but it's tight in the AL Central with the White Sox, the Cleveland Indians, and Minnesota Twins separated by a game and a half here on Labor Day. But what do you think about the White Sox, and might as well talk about those top three teams in the AL Central?
Yeah, the White Sox are they were one of those teams that I wanted to see, along with Cincinnati on the other side in the National League, that I was really excited to see. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe I had them way back before any shutdowns and anything going on. I think I had them reaching the playoffs this year, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not 100% surprised, but they're definitely playing some really good baseball. Luis Robert is he's going to win Rookie of the Year in the AL, without a doubt. But the kid is 23 years old. He's a 5'2" player. Defensively, he's an absolute wizard. He's one of those guys that he's going to be fun to watch the next 10, 15 years, and hopefully he can stay healthy and do that. But their nucleus and their foundation of that roster, they're all young, they're all super talented, and their pitching is coming together. Lucas Giolito, he threw a no-hitter earlier this season. He's coming into his own, and I think it was a couple years ago he was ranked as the worst starter in the league. And to make that turnaround and those changes to kind of be where he is and kind of anchor that staff, and you just love to see a team like the White Sox with all that young talent kind of put it together and show the production and show the league what they're about. And, the rest of the teams there, Cleveland and Minnesota, I thought Minnesota would kind of run away with the division a little bit. But they're not underperforming by any stretch. Offensively, Nelson Cruz is doing what Nelson Cruz does, even at his age, just continuing to mash. And I think they're going to be right in there with the playoffs. Same thing with Cleveland. It seems like they trade a top starter every season and somehow don't lose a beat and just continue along. Shane Bieber, probably the AL Cy Young winner this year if he continues to do what he's doing. Just striking out everybody. That team, that pitching staff, man, that may be the best division in baseball, I think, with the combination of those three teams.
Yeah, I don't think any other division boasts, the quality of play that those three teams have brought so far. And so, the AL Central is shaping up as a good race down the stretch. And, the White Sox, unless something crazy happens, we'll see the White Sox in the postseason as well, which is something we have not seen in quite some time. Going out west, no surprises there. The top two teams are Oakland and Houston. Oakland playing well. Houston, it's been sort of hit or miss. They said 21-19. you know, they're in seventh place overall in the American League. So it hasn't been, the Houston Astros of old. But so what do you think about the West when you look at Oakland and Houston?
Like you said, no surprises there. Oakland is going to be what they are every year, which is a team that's going to contend. I did have them winning the division this season just because I did think that Houston would struggle on the pitching side. And you saw early on, they had a lot of guys who haven't even seen the major league level in past seasons, kind of in there trying to fill in for the spots that, they lost a couple of guys to injuries and things like that. So I'm not entirely surprised with where Houston is in second place. I think I had them going in as a wildcard team. But no surprises there on in the AL Central. I like Oakland. They're a team that, right now they're 4-6 in the last 10 games, but they can really get hot at any point and just kind of go off. Whether it's pitching or offensively. Offensively, I do like the pieces they have. But yeah, no big surprises there with Oakland and Houston and the positioning that they're in.
Yeah. To me, I expected Houston to struggle.
Yeah,
I just think they've been through too much. And then they lost, you lost Garrett Cole. And, it was interesting to see how the hitters were going to respond. And I guess it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. I don't think they really have performed that well, which
yeah.
kind of feeds speculation into why they were so good at any given point.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, Altuve has been struggling big time this year, and
yes,
I don't know if all the stuff has gotten into his head with everything going on in the off season, but he struggled. He has struggled so much this season.
he has, and it's it's inconclusive because we're still talking about a strange season, a shortened
Yeah.
season, so forth. But it still doesn't look good, to see the hitters struggle the way they have, and the team overall struggling the way it has. But like right now, the Yankees and Astros have identical records of 21 and 19, and they're seventh and eighth. They have the last two spots in the AL as far as the postseason. Now, there's some teams who are on the outside looking in. Baltimore and Detroit, maybe even throw Seattle in there. Do you think any of the teams right now who are on the outside of the postseason looking in, do you see any of those teams, Baltimore, Detroit, Seattle? I think we can stop at Seattle
Yeah.
because Anaheim's after that, and Anaheim is quite a ways back. Um, do you see any teams perhaps sneaking in to the playoffs in the AL East who are currently out of the playoff picture?
I don't see any teams sneaking in. I think, a team like the Yankees, like you would hope eventually kind of figure some things out, and they don't need to run the table the rest of the season. They just kind of need to get something right, win 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5, something like that. But I think if out of those three teams, a team I would look for, maybe the Orioles play a little bit more out of their minds and pick up a couple games and just kind of scare those, the Yankees, Twins, Astros, which are at the end there. But I don't think any of those teams will have enough to sneak in, even in this kind of weird season.
Yeah, and then same question out in the National League, where the top four teams, the Dodgers, Braves, Padres, and Cubs, are fine, and then you have teams that are bunched up after that: St. Louis,
Yeah.
Philadelphia, Colorado, San Francisco, the bottom four, and you have Miami, the Mets, and Milwaukee, sort of hovering around. You see any of those teams potentially who are hovering around, sneaking in and making the playoffs?
That would be more interesting because the Marlins are kind of, to my surprise, are playing pretty good in certain stretches. They're not super consistent, but when they play well, they play really well, and they run off a couple games in a row here and there. I think a team like the Mets, their record isn't what their talent is, if that makes sense. I think they could be playing much better baseball. They have some question marks in the bullpen again, which is unfortunate because I think I had them I had them in the playoffs. I thought they had enough to get in there. But then you look at teams like Milwaukee and even Cincinnati a little further down. I don't know. I think Cincinnati, like I said earlier, they underperformed, and had they had a better record, even on the outside looking in right now, I would have them as that team to sneak in. But I think the way that the Giants, the Rockies, even the Phillies, the way they're playing, it's not great baseball. I do think the Phillies could play better. But the Giants are kind of playing a little out of their minds as well. Colorado started super hot and kind of cooled off, but I don't know if they'll do enough to fall off and allow any of those other teams to kind of sneak in. But if I had to make a pick, and I will, just for fun, I want to see the Marlins make the playoffs. Just for kicks, because I think it'll be a fun story to have the Marlins in there after the kind of seasons they've had in the past few seasons.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. And I think you're right that, they've played well enough in stretches where, you have to take them seriously.
Yeah.
And we talked about it, right? There's always some team, right,
Yep.
that is able to play well that you didn't expect, and we all often mention the Marlins because they've done it a number of times in their history, and here they are doing it
Yeah.
again. Now, the one thing about the Marlins, though, is that right now, Rob, they've only played 35 games.
Yeah.
Like St. Louis has only played 32 games, and so, they have some games to make up. Um, St. Louis has 32 games in September. 32
That's
games.
insane.
And the
Wow.
season ends on the 27th, I believe, right?
Yeah,
September
I think so.
27th. So there's 27 days in September in terms of scheduled days. And St. Louis is playing 32 games during the month of September. The Marlins are playing 30 games in September. So for both of
Yeah.
these teams, they're going to be challenged simply by that. Now, if this was a normal season where you had 160 games, 162 games, and you had 32 games in September, that would really be rough. But it's
Oh
only
yeah.
been, a 2-month season. So, it may not be as bad. And, you have the 7 inning double headers and not, the 9 inning double headers that both of these teams are going to have to play. But it's going to be interesting for a team like St. Louis. They still have to play all those games, and they have a bunch of double headers against Milwaukee, who's one of the
Mhm.
teams on the outside looking in. So that's going to be interesting to see as well. And look, I'm a Mets fan, and I'm under no illusions. I don't expect the Mets to sneak in. I just think that the Mets set up their fans for disappointment and every year, and I think this year is more of the same. So enough said about them. I don't see anything happening there. So, but we're certainly going to keep our eye on this stuff, Rob, over the next couple of weeks
Yeah.
as this sort of takes form and takes shape. Um, I would tend to think that teams like Baltimore and Detroit in the American League haven't really shown themselves to me to to be the type of teams that you start saying, oh, they're going to get hot, they're going to do something. But this is a strange year, and Baltimore
Yes, it is.
has been playing fairly well, and so we'll see what happens there. But you know uh, I think in the National League we might see some juggling there because I don't know how good the teams at the bottom of the playoff picture right now, Colorado and San Francisco, just don't know if you can put full confidence in those teams that they can hold on to their spot. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
we'll see what happens at the bottom of each one of these divisions. And unfortunately, man, that includes your Yankees, and hopefully they can start to turn it around um, and solidify their playoff spot. I know you sure hope so.
Yeah, for my sake and my sanity, I really hope they move up in the ranking. I don't know if they'll beat the Rays like that in a first round series. Not with the way they're playing now. They need to get hot. They just need to. I don't expect too much out of Judge and Stan as far as coming back before the playoffs, because we know their injury history and kind of the way things are kind of weird when Yankee players get hurt. We don't get exact timelines. We don't get too much information. And the way they handle things in-house is a little weird in terms of timelines and stuff like that. So for my sanity, I just hope that, one, they're able to make it, and two, they're able to move up a couple spots. Not that facing the White Sox or Oakland at this point is any easier, but I don't want to face the Rays. Not right away.
No, I mean, the Rays are good, and you know what? You add to it the bad blood that's between the two teams,
Yeah.
based on their most recent series, and you know, and the Rays aren't ready to back down from them either. You know what I mean? Because the
No,
Rays know
not at
who
all.
they are. They know that they're good. You know what I mean? They know that they're good, and yeah, I don't blame you for wanting to avoid them as much as possible, but anyway, man, look, it's good catching up with you. And we'll come back before the end of the season. Maybe give it another week or so and see how things move around, if at all, in both the American League and in the National League. And then we'll just come back, take a look at it as we head toward the postseason. But I appreciate you taking some time on the holiday to come and talk baseball with us.
Anytime, anytime. Anytime we talk baseball, it's fun for me. So I'm down for this.
All right. So we'll catch up with you soon, man, and hopefully the Yankees will have improved. But we'll run through it again in any event in about a week or so.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Take care, man.